in June. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's...
When Sal Valentinetti took the stage of America's Got Talent, the world saw a young man with an old soul, a voice that could transport audiences to a time when music was pure, heartfelt, and unhurried. His charm was effortless, his smile infectious, and his performance electrifying. For viewers, it was a magical moment, a seemingly instant connection between talent and destiny. But behind the curtain, Sal's journey was far more complicated, far more fragile than the spotlight suggested. The truth is, fame is rarely straightforward. Sal's path after the show was paved with high expectations, unforeseen obstacles, and the harsh reality of a world that moves quickly while dreams often linger just out of reach. He encountered doors that opened briefly, only to close before he could step through. Support networks were limited, guidance was scarce, and the pressure to sustain a moment of national attention weighed heavily on him. What happened next was a series of quiet struggles that the public never saw, moments of doubt, missed opportunities, and the emotional toll of balancing a burgeoning career with personal challenges. The narrative of instant success proved incomplete. Sal's story is a reminder that talent alone cannot shield a person from the unpredictability of life, and that the hardest battles often happen when the applause is faded and the stage is empty. This is the untold story of Sal Valentinetti, the highs, the heartbreak, and the resilience behind the curtain. Sal Valentinetti stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage with the kind of calm confidence that belied his age. To the audience, he was a man who seemed born to perform, a voice that carried warmth, nostalgia, and unmistakable charm. But beneath the smile and the effortless poise was a young man navigating a world that demanded more than talent to survive. For years, Sal had dreamed of this moment, not just the applause, but the validation, the chance to make his voice heard on a stage that could change everything. From the very first note, it was clear that Sal had something special. The judges leaned forward, the crowd hushed, and for a brief, shining instant, it seemed like the universe had aligned in his favor. Television cameras captured his charm, his sincerity, his undeniable talent. Fans online praised him. Social media buzzed with excitement. For a few shining moments, it felt like the world had finally noticed him, but the reality behind the performance was far more complex. Sal's life before the show had been a series of small gigs, late-night rehearsals, and relentless dedication. He had performed in bars, clubs, and local theaters, always hoping the right person would hear him, the right opportunity would arrive. Talent alone had never been enough. Each performance was both a chance and a gamble, a delicate balance between hope and frustration. When his audition aired nationally, Sal felt both exhilaration and unease. The praise was overwhelming yet fleeting. Offers came, but not the kind that could secure a career. Meetings with producers and agents often ended with polite encouragement, but little actionable support. He quickly realized that the television spotlight was a double-edged sword. It shone brightly, but only for a moment. Even as Sal gained public attention, the pressures behind the scenes mounted. Financial strain was a constant concern, and he struggled to sustain himself while chasing the dream that the show had promised might be within reach. Every day became a test of endurance, performing, networking, rehearsing, and trying to stay motivated while opportunities seemed just out of grasp. The fear of fading into obscurity was real, a shadow that followed him even in moments of triumph. Emotionally, the journey was draining. Sal wanted to believe that talent would carry him, that sincerity and charm would open doors naturally. But the harsh lessons of the industry became clear quickly. Connections mattered, timing mattered, and the right exposure could vanish in a single day. Nights that once were filled with excitement began to feel heavy with expectation, doubt, and the quiet fear of failure. Still, Sal remained committed. He sang because it was who he was, not just what he hoped to become. Music was a refuge, a constant in a world that was often unpredictable and unkind. He found moments of joy in practice rooms and collaborations, and in the rare recognition that reminded him why he had started on this path. Yet, the true challenge was learning to navigate the aftermath of instant attention. Being seen was different from being understood. Sal realized that the world wanted a polished story, a neat narrative of triumph, while he was living the messy, complicated reality of building a career that could sustain him. The applause faded, and in its place came the hard work, uncertainty, and emotional resilience required to survive beyond the cameras. This was only the beginning for Sal Valentinetti, the first step into a world where talent opened doors. But survival required far more than anyone could see from the stage. After the thrill of the national spotlight faded, Sal Valentinetti found himself confronting a reality far different from the excitement of America's Got Talent. The applause, the recognition, the instant validation all had vanished almost overnight, leaving behind a quiet pressure that no one else seemed to see. While viewers assumed that his audition guaranteed opportunity and a smooth path forward, Sal knew the truth. Talent could only carry him so far. The world he had glimpsed on television was tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly out of reach. Every day presented challenges he hadn't anticipated. Meetings with producers and potential collaborators often ended politely, with vague promises that went nowhere. Calls and emails remained unanswered. The momentum that had once surged through him slowed to a near standstill, leaving him questioning whether he was doing something wrong, or if the industry simply didn't know how to support a performer like him. It was a lesson many young artists learned too late. Recognition alone does not secure a career. Emotionally, the gap between expectation and reality was difficult to manage. Sal began to experience moments of self-doubt that gnawed at his confidence. Was his voice truly enough? Had he misread the opportunities that came his way? The pressure to transform a fleeting moment to visibility into lasting success weighed heavily. Nights that should have been filled with music became restless, plagued by questions and quiet anxiety. He tried to push these feelings aside, to focus on practice and networking, but the emotional strain remained persistent. Financial instability added another layer of challenge. While America's Got Talent had given him a platform, it had not provided the means to sustain a livelihood. Sal took smaller gigs wherever he could find them, local shows, private events, short-term performances, each one a reminder of how precarious life as an emerging artist could be. Balancing survival with the pursuit of a dream that had briefly felt within reach became a constant, exhausting juggling act. The loneliness was perhaps the hardest part. Friends and fans celebrated his televised success, but few understood the emotional toll of being thrust into the public eye without the infrastructure to support growth. Sal smiled, reassured, and encouraged others, hiding the fatigue and doubt that had begun to accumulate. Silence became both his shield and his burden, a quiet way of protecting himself from judgment while carrying the weight of unspoken challenges. Music, once a source of refuge and joy, began to feel like a reminder of the gap between aspiration and reality. Every performance, every rehearsal, carried a dual purpose: to express his art and to prove his worth. The joy of singing was interwoven with anxiety, each note a negotiation between passion and the pressure to succeed. Even when the audience cheered, the applause was tinged with a bitter awareness that the moment might not last, and that the future remained uncertain. Yet, despite the setbacks, Sal's resilience remained. He refused to give up. He continued performing, creating, and seeking opportunities to be heard. He reminded himself that this struggle was part of the journey, a necessary test of endurance and determination. In quiet moments, he found solace in small victories, a song that landed perfectly, a connection with someone who believed in him, or the rare recognition that reminded him of why he had started on this path. Through it all, Sal learned a vital lesson about the world of entertainment. It is as much about survival as it is about talent. Fame can arrive suddenly, but maintaining it requires strategy, support, and relentless effort. And for every moment in the spotlight, there are countless hours of unseen labor, self-doubt, and resilience that shape the artist behind the performance. Sal Valentinetti had stepped onto a stage that promised possibility. But now he had to navigate the complex, unglamorous reality of what came next, a journey that would test not only his voice, but his heart. Months passed and Sal Valentinetti began to understand the true weight of fleeting fame. The bright lights of America's Got Talent had faded, leaving a quiet emptiness that no applause could fill. The recognition he had once thought would launch his career now felt like a fragile illusion. Opportunities came and went, often slipping through his fingers before he could fully grasp them. He began to realize that the world of entertainment was far less about talent and far more about timing, strategy, and connections. Talent alone was not enough. Sal's mornings were filled with renewed determination. Yet evenings brought doubt that gnawed at his confidence. Each time he performed, he reminded himself of the joy that singing had always brought. But even that joy was tinged with anxiety. Would this performance open doors, or would it be another fleeting moment in a long series of near misses? The uncertainty was exhausting. He had glimpsed what life could be like in the spotlight, but he had not been prepared for the struggle to sustain it. Financial strain compounded his emotional burden. While his national exposure had offered potential, it had not brought financial security. Sal balanced gigs of varying scales, sometimes performing in intimate venues that barely covered expenses, while still dreaming of opportunities that matched his talent. Each setback carried a personal weight, a reminder that recognition on television did not equate to stability in life. The pressure to transform visibility into something lasting was relentless. The loneliness was also profound. Friends offered support, but few understood the emotional isolation of being a young artist navigating the aftermath of sudden attention. Sal smiled and reassured people, hiding the fatigue, disappointment, and fear that accompanied him everywhere. Silence became both his shield and his burden, a way to protect himself while privately wrestling with mounting stress and uncertainty. Music, once pure sanctuary, became a double-edged sword. Every song carried the weight of expectation, each note measured against the hope that it could reignite momentum. The passion that had driven him for years was still present, but it was often tangled with anxiety and self-doubt. He questioned whether his efforts were sufficient, whether he was moving fast enough, whether he was destined to remain just shy of the success he had glimpsed yet. Despite the hardships, Sal's resilience endured. He continued performing, honing his craft, and pursuing opportunities that seemed just beyond reach. Even small achievements, a positive response from an audience, a new contact in the industry, a song that landed perfectly offered validation that he had not lost his way entirely. They were reminders of why he had embarked on this journey and why he could not abandon it. No matter how challenging the path became, Sal learned a difficult truth. The entertainment industry is not built solely on talent. Fame is transient. Opportunity is often conditional, and perseverance is as essential as ability. For every moment in the spotlight, there are countless hours of unseen work, self-doubt, and emotional resilience that shape the artist behind the performance. The journey after recognition can be as demanding, if not more so, than the journey to it. By the end of that year, Sal understood that his story was not simply about talent or exposure, it was about endurance, hope, and the quiet struggles that follow the applause. He faced the reality that his dream would require more than a single moment of national attention. It would demand patience, persistence, and the courage to keep moving forward, even when the world had already moved on. As time went on, Sal Valentinetti realized that the most difficult part of his journey was not performing or being judged. It was surviving the quiet aftermath of sudden recognition. The world had seen him at his best, heard his voice fill a national stage, and assumed that everything would naturally follow from that moment. Yet the reality was far more complex. The applause faded, the cameras moved on, and Sal was left with the task of translating a fleeting glimpse of fame into a sustainable career, a challenge that proved far more demanding than anyone had anticipated. The pressure weighed heavily on him, emotionally and mentally. Each day became a careful negotiation between hope and reality. Sal reminded himself of the moments that had fueled his dream. The thrill of a perfect note, the smiles in the audience, the encouragement of judges and fans. But those moments were no longer guarantees of opportunity. They had become bittersweet reminders of what could have been and what he still had to fight to achieve. Nights were often the hardest, filled with reflection, doubt, and the quiet fear that he might never reach the level of success he had envisioned. Financial uncertainty remained a constant companion. Though he continued to perform wherever he could, local venues, private events, and occasional larger shows, it was never enough to ease the practical pressures of life. Sal had to stretch every opportunity, balancing survival with ambition. The gap between aspiration and reality grew more pronounced with each passing month. The struggle was not for lack of talent. It was for the ability to sustain and navigate the unpredictable tides of an industry that demanded both resilience and strategic awareness. Even so, Sal's love for music never waned. It remained his refuge and his identity. Every song he sang carried both passion and a quiet defiance, a refusal to let circumstances diminish his voice. Yet the weight of expectation and the lingering disappointment he had carried over the months were unmistakable. They had changed him, tempered his youthful optimism, and forced him to confront the harsh truth that success is never immediate and it is rarely guaranteed. Even when talent is undeniable, loneliness continued to be a silent adversary. Sal often performed in front of audiences that adored him, yet offstage he felt a subtle isolation. Few understood the emotional toll of being a public success without the structural support to follow through. He smiled, reassured friends and fans, and projected confidence, even as fatigue and quiet frustration accumulated within. The contrast between appearance and reality became a daily challenge, requiring emotional fortitude he had never anticipated needing so soon. Through it all, Sal demonstrated remarkable resilience. He refused to abandon his craft or his dream, choosing instead to persevere quietly, performing and creating even when recognition did not immediately follow. Each small success, an appreciative audience, a positive review, a meaningful connection, was a reminder that the journey was ongoing. That progress was measured in more than headlines or television moments. Sal's story is not simply about a single moment of fame. It is about the endurance, patience, and quiet courage required after the spotlight fades. It is about the reality behind the applause, the unseen struggles of talent navigating an industry that is as unpredictable as it is exhilarating. For Sal Valentinetti, the journey continues not defined by fleeting recognition, but by the persistence to keep singing, keep believing, and keep moving forward, even when the world has already moved on. In the end, the tragedy is not that the dream was too big, but that the path to sustaining it is longer, harder, and far less visible than anyone could imagine. And yet Sal persists, proof that true dedication never fades, even in the absence of applause.